this is Hua with Piquant, part 2. If you have not listened to part 1, it is located in the video channel. And if you have not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button and let's support each other. Enjoy! It was after midnight when I returned home. The bungalow was dark and quiet as I entered. My mother had left the windows open and the curtains were blowing in from the night breeze. As I closed the door, the lights turned on, and I found my mother sitting in a chair with wide open eyes staring at me. But she was sporting a smile as if she knew this was how it was going to play out. She stood up from her chair as I slipped out of the shoes I wore. "You're home later than expected. I hope it went well?" she asked. "Mother, if you're looking for details, I'm sorry, but it's all stored away. No matter how much you bribe, it's not going to be open for anyone to hear or see. But to scratch that itch of yours, no, we didn't sleep together." Her smile widened. "Oh, ever the gentleman." I sat on the couch. Yes, Garrison, the gentleman. He was the gentleman. He was so different from anyone I knew. He wasn't harsh like Jake. He wasn't built like Jake. In fact, he wasn't anything like Jake. And it made me feel good that he was different. I needed different. I needed change. He hadn't said much about himself, simply that he was on vacation and was looking to discover a different path. He was tired of the same scene where the woman chased him. He wanted a new life, and here he found me. I was the difference he wanted. That brought a smile to my face. My mother smiled at me. "Looks like you found a winner. When you keep smiling like that after a date, you know you got a good one." I looked up at her. "I hardly know him, Mother." "Yes, I know, but we're here for another 9 days. It's a good enough length of time to know someone. I expect from now on, I won't be seeing much of you." She walked off to bed, and I laughed. Tonight had been a good change. Garrison took me to a quiet dinner where we shared a very large lobster. We drank out of coconuts and danced together. It had been a good start. He didn't divulge much about his life. He hadn't asked for more when I said I was getting a new start in life. I smiled and inhaled deeply. Starting over was so beautiful. "Good morning. You got yourself an embarrassing display of white roses," my mother said as I woke up. True to form, there were over 40 bouquets of white roses placed around in my room. My eyes flew wide open as I got out of bed and walked around. The feeling of being appreciated flipped over and over inside my body. I turned to my mother, who was busy digging a card out from one of the bouquets. I waited until she retrieved it and then snatched it right out of her hands. You're welcome," she said. I laughed and I read it out loud. "It wasn't enough last night. I need more. Meet me tonight at the cove and wear the bikini." "Oh my God, does he have a brother?" my mother shrieked. I turned to her. "Mom, you're 52. So? No law says I can't boink someone his age." My cheeks flushed, and I looked at her in disbelief. "Please, don't ever say that again. I think I've just scarred myself with the imagination." Laughing, she took the card from me. "Honey, you have to understand that a woman has to remain sexy within herself. If you don't, men forget to turn heads when you walk." I ignored that comment as she walked off. I stared at the roses and sighed deeply. What an amazing display. I had never seen so many together at once. It almost felt unreal as I sat down in the middle surrounded by it. The happiness inside me grew, and I thanked my lucky stars. The happiness died as the evening approached. Jake and I had a pretty dead marriage at the end, and it had been over a year since I slept with him. I was literally scared to death that Garrison would suggest sex and I would disappoint him. Jake hadn't been a good partner when it came to pleasing me. He would do his deed, roll over, and snore. It was the same routine every single time. I knew exactly how it would start and how it would end, but Garrison scared me. It was almost like the first time. Oh, shit, Peyton. Stop it. He's probably not going to sleep with you. Don't get your hopes up. There. That shut up my brain. The cove was a few miles north of where my mother and I stayed. After getting directions for the 4th time, I finally found it. It was tucked away in a neat little corner. I saw a fire burning, and I shivered, even though it was warm. I had put a summer dress over the bikini, and as I got closer, I suddenly felt shy. I stopped to drink in the view, and suddenly he appeared, wearing a pair of black shorts and nothing else. His eyes roamed until they found mine. A smile formed on his face, and the flutters came back. It tortured me until I felt as if I was ready to fall. My breath came out uneven, and the ground moved. Garrison started walking toward me, and my body shook. With every step, I felt my bones chatter. When he reached me, I was out of breath. I thought I specifically asked for the bikini, he said as he looked me up and down. Oh, I have it on. His eyes lit up. Can I see it? Now? He nodded. With shaking fingers, I reached for the dress, but he stopped me. He moved forward and bent down to his knees, his eyes never leaving mine as his fingers came to the hem of the dress. When his hand brushed against my skin, I shivered. He smiled and took the dress, lifting up until it was off my body. He drank in the view, and as slowly as possible and as ever, a smile formed on his lips. He dropped the dress on the ground and moved closer until we were together. I wanted this to be special, but hell, I can't wait anymore. I hardly ever make it to a second date, but you seem to have me bending my rules. What have you done to me, Peyton? Garrison whispered. His lips captured mine in a tight battle, and I responded. Holy shit, it was pure magic kissing him. Nothing was left hanging, and I was spinning. I was leaning toward him for support, and he picked me up. His eyes searched mine for a response, and when he found it, he hurried back to the cove where a fire was burning. There, I saw a mattress covered in red satin sheet lying on the ground. A bottle of champagne was chilling, some sandwiches, and a litter of flowers. I wanted to cry. He laid me down on the bed and took my hands. I want you to know that when I do this, I don't stop until I'm satisfied. You may be sore, Peyton, but until my hunger is fulfilled, I keep going. I was frightened. I looked up at him, and with trembling lips, I uttered, What does that mean? Be prepared for a sleepless night. As soon as he said the last word, he took my lips, and all was lost. When I woke, it was morning, and I was sore. He wasn't kidding when he said I would be. Last night's lovemaking had me exhausted and famished. I never knew it could be this way. I was alone, though, and Garrison was nowhere to be found. I dressed in the bikini and pulled the dress over, just as he entered carrying a tray of assorted fruits. A smile lit up on his face as he stared at me. He set it down and came to kiss me gently on the lips. You're a wonderful sight to see in the morning, he said. I blushed and ran my hand through my hair. You brought breakfast. You must be hungry after last night. I should have warned you. Again, I blushed. Garrison, about last night. No, don't. It's too early in the day to be giving me that kind of talk. And I want a repeat of last night. So if you're telling me you're done, you're out of luck. I'm afraid that you won't be satisfied." Laughing, he plucked a strawberry from the plate and brought it to my lips. I took a bite, and before I could say another word, he kissed me. And when he pulled away, his eyes were smoky with passion. "Peyton, I hate that you look at yourself that way. You're everything I want and more. If last night wasn't proof that you were good enough, I don't know what is." I swallowed the fruit and cleared my throat. "I've only been with my ex-husband. I don't know much about pleasing a man." "The sight of you pleases me enough. Unless you want me to show you how much you please me, I'd be happy to oblige. Right now." I took the fruit from his hand. "I believe you." When I returned home, my mother wasn't in the bungalow. I was relieved, actually, because I wasn't ready to talk about what happened. My head was still clouded about last night's event. He was the first man ever to make me realize how beautiful lovemaking could be. The hunger he had for me was terrifying, that it almost made it seem unreal. Was it possible for a man to be this way? Well, whether it was possible or not, he did it last night. I smiled, the images of us cloaked together flashing through my mind. The words he whispered burned my memory, and the kisses he left tingled my lips. He was an amazing lover, and he was more than what I had bargained for. I didn't expect to be swept away when I decided to come here for a getaway. After a shower, I fell asleep. When I woke, my mother was sitting on a chair, staring at me. I sat up immediately. "It was strange seeing your mother watching you sleep at 8, but at 35, it was downright creepy." "Gosh, Mother, I would appreciate it if you didn't do that." She sat up and leaned her elbows on her knees. "You look like a woman well satisfied. I knew you were going to get something sweet." "Okay, can we not talk about that? I'm way too old to be talking about this with my mother." She walked to me. "I'm glad it's turning out good for you, sweetheart. Why don't you get dressed and we can head out to dinner?" "I can't." She shrugged. "Why not?" "I'm dining with Garrison." A smile lit up on her face. "Of course you are." The next 6 days were magical. I spent my nights making love with Garrison, my mornings waking up in his arms, and my afternoons walking with him on the beach. I was stuck in a lost world where passion and love was all I knew. He fed me wild fruits, kissed me in tender spots, and made love to me like it was the end of the world. I was spoiled rotten by a man who I was beginning to fall in love with. It only took him 7 days to make my heart swell with emotion. By then, I was lost inside his eyes, his arms, and his kisses. On the last day before my mother and I were to depart, I woke up in my own bungalow, having left a pretty saddened Garrison when I refused his offer to sleep in his bed. I pulled on a white summer dress and slipped my feet into my sandals. As I grabbed my hat and keys, heading to the market to spend an afternoon with Garrison, I walked out of the bungalow and something caught my eye, and I turned toward the house seated next to us. There, caught in another woman's arms, was Jake. She was a pretty blonde who was clearly very pregnant, and he was kissing her like no tomorrow. I wasn't sure what hurt more, seeing him kiss her or seeing her pregnant. Before I knew what I was doing, I marched over and threw my hat at Jake. "What the hell?" he yelled as he looked at me. When he saw who it was, his face paled and he dropped his hands. The woman backed away, her hands dropping to her belly. Tears engulfed me as I watched as Jake's eyes dropped to the ground, unable to look at me. "You were cheating on me long before you decided to leave me, weren't you?" I asked. He looked up, his eyes all gone of emotion. "Peyton, our marriage, it would have ended no matter what." "But you lied to me!" You made me believe that you were good and that you were leaving because you wanted me to start over with a good man, when in fact, you were leaving to be with her. Her name is Amy, the woman said. I glanced at her. I don't think this involves you. She smiled. I think it does. I love him. Clearly, he doesn't love you. We're about to have a baby together. He left you because I was better. Amy, get inside the house. The woman, whose blue eyes were bright, smiled at me with no meaning. She turned and walked away as tears dripped down my face. I looked up at him and found he held no emotion for me. It burned me deeper, and I sobbed. How could you? I loved you for 15 years, I cried. Yes, you did. But things change. People change, and we grew apart. But you left as if you were unhappy with the marriage, not because you had another woman. I thought you were just unhappy. The unhappiness led me to her, Jake said as he moved closer to me. You're a woman hard to please, Peyton. 15 years with you, and I felt as if I was in a prison. It's your own damn fault we didn't work out. If only you had tried to make me happy, I would have stayed. I sucked in a deep breath as the pain escalated through my chest. So it's my fault. My fault that you couldn't keep your pants zipped? Tears burned my eyes. I loved you, Jake. And all the while I was moving on, I thought perhaps you just didn't want to stay with me. I never thought that there was going to be somebody else behind my back. And she looks like she's ready to have that baby any day. How long have you been seeing her? What does it matter? I'm with her now and you're alone, so just leave it be. I sobbed and slapped him hard across the face. Turning, I ran into the bungalow to find my mother coming out of the shower. Her smile died as she saw me and ran to hug me. What's wrong? She asked. I can't stay here. I have to leave. What? Why? Did Garrison do something to you? Garrison? No, I just saw Jake. He's with another woman. She laughed. You're here with another guy. I shot my head up. She's 8 months pregnant with his kid. Her smile faded and the knowledge sunk in. She let me go as I went around putting everything into my luggage. The tears continued to burn, and I wiped them away, upset that it would hurt this much. The thought of him going behind my back and giving another woman his seed while I was left alone was more than heartbreaking. It tore at me and ate at my insides. I needed to leave. I needed to get away from this place. He was here, and he was too much for me to handle. What about Garrison? My mother asked. I'll leave him a note. I just need to go. I thought I told you to shut the damn door on Hurt, my mother said as she hugged me. I was crying my eyes out when she found me a week later. I was still brewing over the fact that Jake had another woman the whole time I was still married to him. The part of him wanting out didn't hurt as bad as him cheating on me. He had made a vow to love me, only me, and in the end, he was about to father a baby that wouldn't come from me. Well, that door has opened, I said. Can you seal it this time and throw away the key? I sobbed. It's too hard. I know. No one said it was going to be easy. But look on the bright side. You met an incredible man already. I left him a stupid note. He probably hates me and right now he's probably cursing me to die. Nonsense. If he is as smart as I think he is, he'll forgive you. I wiped my nose. Oh, God. I need to find a job. I can't keep living like this. It'll just drive me insane. Well, that's a good start. Finding a job wasn't as easy as I thought it was. I worked as an assistant a few years back, and when the company went bankrupt, I have been jobless since. I surfed the net for a few hours, and then my mind drifted to Garrison. Would he hate me? Would I ever see him again? I thought back to our lovemaking nights. I tingled just thinking of it. Rubbing my neck, I hung my head down. I ruined it. I ruined it because Jake was an asshole. Peyton? My mother's voice rang up shrill and made my ears hurt. I looked up as she entered my room. She was carrying a newspaper with her. What is it? I asked. She unfolded the paper, and the image that stared back at me made me want to faint. It was blurry, but I knew it was of me and Garrison together in the cove. The headline read, Bachelor Garrison Caught in Sex Scandal. I stood up so fast my head knocked my mother's chin. She gasped, but I felt nothing as I read the article. My fingers shook, and when I looked up, my mother was biting her nails. They had called me an unknown bimbo. That had me on fire. What the hell am I going to do? The doorbell rang at that moment. We both ran to the door and opened it. A man dressed in black stood there with his dark eyes staring at me. I have never seen anyone dressed like that at my door, and then when I looked behind him, there was another car that blocked my escape. Miss Peyton Jones? Who is asking? He pulled out a badge. I'm national security with the Pentagon. I need you to come with me. What? What has she done? My mother asked. Your questions will be answered shortly. Please come with me now. Before I could answer, the man pulled me out and slammed the door on my mother. If I thought getting caught sneaking around was bad, I was way wrong. The silent man driving the car made my skin crawl in ways I couldn't describe. My insides were all jostled up, and my brain was trying to figure out why I was being secretly whipped away. Did I win $1 million? Oh my God, get real, Peyton. The windows were tinted from the inside, and I had no idea where I was going. I wasn't even allowed to bring anything. I had no phone, no money, and if they were to kill me, my mother would never find out. Fear escalated through me, and I began to shake. This wasn't a film. This was real. I was being kidnapped. Hey, you! Hey, if you don't stop this car, I'm gonna call the police, I screamed. The man pretended as if he hadn't heard a word. He continued driving, and then as suddenly as we started, we stopped. He got out and opened my car door. There was a tall white building before me, and as I pondered how I was going to escape, he yanked me out and dragged me to the front door. Hey, easy on the hands, I cried. We're late. Late for what? He didn't answer as he shoved me and we walked up the stairs. Inside, there was a receptionist eyeing me with an unfriendly glare. The man took out his badge and scanned it against the machine. The buzzer came on and the door opened. He walked me to the elevator and we got in. He pushed the very top floor button and we rode up. Ironically, no one else got on and we were on the 15th floor in no time. When the doors opened, he took my arm again and we walked toward a room with French doors. He opened it, and as we did, the first set of eyes I saw belonged to Garrison. He was sitting in a chair with an older gentleman who had the same features as he did. Garrison was dressed in a neat black tux with his hair done with care. The older man beside him wore a white suit that had been pressed and starched to perfection. He had the same eyes as Garrison, and he was now gazing at me. The room held 4 other men who were wearing black suits. They were each tall and slender built with dark hair, but they were staring at me as if I had murdered someone. My throat was dry, and I was petrified. Miss Jones, will you take a seat, please? The man on the far left said. I couldn't move. The man who had driven me in pulled out a chair and shoved me into it. When I had sat down, I ignored all their eyes, and I could feel Garrison's eyes on me. Miss Jones, I'm National Security Ben Stone, the same man said again. I suppose you must be wondering why you're here. I finally looked up at the man who spoke. He was staring at me with a deep gaze that burned me to the soul. Yes? Ben sighed and stood up. He looked over at Garrison and then returned his gaze to me. Miss Jones, do you know this man? I ignored looking at Garrison. Yes, I do. His name is Garrison. Is that all he told you? I frowned and finally shifted my gaze to Garrison. He was quiet and staring at his hands. I turned my attention to Ben. Yes, that's all he said. He didn't mention anything about a secret document being signed with the United States? I laughed. Is this some sort of a joke? Ben didn't find that funny. You're here on serious charges. I suggest you quit the comedy. That got me to shut up. Mr. Stone, I'm sorry, but I seem to be running around in circles trying to figure out what is going on here exactly. I'm really confused. I have no idea what is going on. Can you please explain to me why I was yanked from my home and brought here? And what are the serious charges I've been charged with? Ben crossed his arms. Miss Jones, you really have no idea, do you? I shook my head. He reached for the manila envelope and pushed it across the table to me. With shaking hands, I took it out, and my gasp cut the silence of the room loudly. It was the same photos that were printed in the tabloids, but these were the clear 8x10 colored copies. It showed Garrison and I locked in so many different love-making positions. Embarrassment burned me, and I turned the photos over, my cheeks flushed and my breath short. Who is responsible for these? I asked. Ben cleared his throat. Do you have any idea who you had a fling with? I turned to look at Garrison, who was now staring directly at me. His jaws were moving, and I was petrified of the answer. I swallowed hard and shook my head slowly. Miss Jones, he said, getting my attention, the man you're looking at right now, the man you were having an affair with, is the Duke of England's noble heir. Holy shit. I saw flashes of red and a sob escaped from me. I turned to look at Ben, and the tears blurred my vision. My hands were shaking as I leaned back in my chair, trying to regain control of my emotions. A noble heir to England? I shut my eyes and a tear squeezed through. I need you to pay attention, Miss Jones. I need to know if he discussed anything confidential with you. It's enough, a deep voice interrupted. I opened my eyes and saw the man sitting beside Garrison, looking at me. He turned to Ben. Why don't you give the girl a break and ask my son what it is you want to know? Ben nodded. Okay. Garrison smiled. Why don't I spare you the trouble and just tell you what happened? That would be even better, Ben said. Garrison turned to look at me for a quick moment. It's true what she said. She had no idea who I was. I made sure of it. I kept my background out of the conversation. He lifted his eyes to Ben. She doesn't know of any desire of the U.S. wanting to do business with England. So then what did you talk about? Ben asked. Garrison crossed his arms. You've seen the photos, Mr. Stone. Do you think we did any talking? Ben turned red. I can't let her go without a clear conscience. She remains a threat to the U.S. about destroying a treaty with England. She's likely to know details she shouldn't. Let me talk to her for a moment, Mr. Stone. I'm sure that she's been shocked beyond anything. Do as my son asks, the older man said. Ben groaned. Fine. The room across the hall. 15 minutes. Garrison stood up and walked to me, extending a hand. I refused. When I didn't reach out, he simply yanked me out of my chair and dragged me out. Catch part 3 in the next episode. Thank you for joining me.